Officials indemnity, sometimes known as trustees indemnity or charity trustees indemnity on charity policies. You're looking to protect the people that are sitting on the committees. They're working on behalf of the council, councillors who are sort of unpaid, but they may have claims against them. So it's cover is to respond to wrongful act or alleged wrongful act, error, or omission committed by the council. Generally, it's by an individual. Got a little example, actual example. A claim arose due to an accidental duplicate sale, reservation of a burial plot. Unfortunately, the claimant only realised and raised their concern after the burial had taken place. So, somebody's made an error individually, but it's and it's an official of the council. So you don't want to, have people coming after you as an individual. So it's an important section that all policies for local councils, bespoke policies, will have in place. This is the type of information the insurer will want in the case of an allegation of so a copy of the allegation in itself. What do they think has been done and who do they think is at fault? Documentation will depend on the nature of the claim, but records or correspondence relevant to the alleged error. It could be email correspondence or letters. They will always ask your own thoughts on whether you feel you're responsible for the alleged error. There's names of parties involved. It's just one of those things. Things do happen, so you want to know that the policy is going to respond, and there are sections that are designed to protect everybody, but you've got to have evidence to back up what you did, and that it was just an accident or a mistake. So the employer's liability insurance section protects the council against costs of employee compensation claims for illness or injury caused by their work or where the council is viewed as negligent. The definition of employees, as I discussed earlier, is not just PAYE employees. It's clerk, it's councillors, it's volunteers, and other paid employees. But it's people working on behalf of the council as if they were an employee. When we think of employer's liability, we automatically think of accidents in the workplace, but it could also be, as you see there, not physical injury, but mental health, bullying, harassment. Again, this is a sort of information that an insurer is going to want to know. And it's a repeat of what we've been going over. It's what documentation have you got in place to show that you were protecting your employer, your employees, your volunteers against a claim. So it's everything from, they want to know that the exact details of the incident and when it happened, and what records have you got prior to the accident, inspection, maintenance programs, risk assessment. Were they passed to the individual to tell them don't pick up needles, for example? Were they told not to do that in the risk assessment or the notes? Details of any action taken since the incident. Again, repeat, what have you done to stop it happening again? Have you fixed that broken area? And there it is again, another reminder. If you don't have required documents and evidence, your insurers don't have ammunition. Key person cover. Our policy, we've got a policy with Gallagher with Hiscox Insurance. It does provide weekly sum of up to £250, or you can increase to £400 for up to 6 months to cover the costs for staff sickness. So there is a personal accident section I mentioned earlier. So if they have an accident, but if they are sick for any length of time, then you may have to pay for a locum clerk. And that's an extra cost to the council. So it's not, it may not cover the whole 6 month period these days, but it will go towards it. As I say, it can be temporary staff, locum, or extra hours worked by assisting staff. Illness cover will always be included in your policy unless you're insured with us. So will not always be included. So not all insurers add that cover. Some only cover, they call it the same thing, but it's only if there's an accident rather than illness. It's just an average claim amount. Just an example there, a clerk was absent for several months due to a severe and extended illness. The clerk in question was a clerk to 5 separate councils. Subsequently, 5 separate claims are required to consider the additional expenses of each council as a result of a single illness. A claim, if there is a claim, obviously keep your insurer updated as soon as possible. So if you think somebody's going to go off sick and it's likely to be for an extended period, then it's notify your insurer quickly, because they want to know, who is it, what's the likely return to work, and then they'll need some evidence of the loss, so invoices, receipts, pay slips. So it's best to get in early with this information so that they can start dealing with it quickly. And it may, you may have to then pay for a locum, so deal with that settlement of this key person claim quickly. Details of any savings, I guess that they will say, well, they're looking at what your actual loss was, so they'll balance it out against that. When the key person returned to work or was replaced. Fidelity Guarantee cover, also known as employee dishonesty. There's an old example there, but not too long ago, the council clerk managed to steal some money. It does still happen, believe it or not. Usually the controls are a lot tighter these days, but it's also always worth checking doing a financial risk assessment. So how are we protecting our finances? We always talk about we always have dual signatures on checks or dual sign off for certain amounts, but have a look about how people may conspire together. If they did, how much could they get away with? Where is that money in different accounts? How much could they like to get, and how do we prevent that happening? What are our safeguards? I would say the risk should be small these days. Auditors will look at some of the controls you have in place as well, and sort of make sure you're reminded, but it still has happened. The cover itself on your policy, often you'll get a standard limit. So our policy, for example, whatever your size of council, you'll automatically get 150,000 as a standard limit. But then you have to weigh up what's the maximum amount of money in the council's accounts at any one time. You usually judge it on if you get your precept in 2 halves. So the maximum amount could be when that lump sum arrives in the account. It could be so you say, well, I've got a precept, half of the precept is 70,000, but we've got reserves of 400,000 in different accounts. So you need to weigh up the risk. Is that 400,000 in reserves, however, in accounts that are easily accessible, or in some in high interest accounts where you have to give 6 months notice? So maybe you don't need to cover the full 400,000, but that's how you sort of work out your maximum risk, and that's what you should be insuring for on your policy. Basically, for a claim to proceed, the council must follow its own financial regulations. So if you're getting on a new employee who's looking after who has access to the finances, then you must have risk assessments. Sorry, you must have be able to check their background and that they are safe to use. You look at your controls as to who can sign off. and what are your levels? You know, does it need to go to council over a certain amount, for example, to make sure it's controlled? I won't go through all of those, but these are some of the things the insurers are sort of looking for you to be controlling the risk of a claim from a member of staff. Successful accounting system requires that basic cash book is kept up to date and balanced to regular. A record will also be agreed of vouchers. A member or officer may do the checking or verification. The one thing that we found is that there is a requirement to make, you know, if somebody who usually does the banking is off for a period of time, so they've got on an extended leave, so they're going on holiday for 2 or 3 weeks, that you have to, how are those controls kept? You know, who's keeping an eye on the person that usually does the accounts? Because if you need to know that this can be identified quickly as soon as possible.